Well, Bengals wide receiver Ja'Marr Chase had some very interesting things to say about the Chiefs defense, who are one of the best in the league, but this delusional man is pretending that Sneed isn't playing at an all-pro level as he once again shows zero respect for KC's defense. So we got to talk about that as well as my interview with Ja'Marr Chase. Also, Russell Wilson got benched and will most likely be cut from the Broncos this offseason. We also got to look at the final injury report between the Bengals and Chiefs because there are some key injuries on there with a hopeful wide receiver set to make his return from IR and much freaking more. But first, how about those? First up, Chiefs Bids is back with another partnered giveaway of this full-size helmet signed by Travis Kelce, but more on that in a bit because we have some very interesting news about an AFC West rival, if you care to call them that, considering they are 1-16 over the last 17 matchups. Poor little guys. But that is, Broncos quarterback Russell Wilson is no longer the starting QB for the team. That's right. Broncos head coach Sean Payton reportedly met earlier this week with Mr. Unlimited to inform him that he has indeed reached his limit with him, and he was going to be benched for the last 2 weeks of the season. And from the reports I've seen and heard, this is a conversation that's been going on behind the scenes since the Broncos reached out to Russell Wilson's representatives in late October during their bye week and explained that Wilson could lose the starting job if he did not defer the injury guarantee trigger date that he has for 2025. And some of you may be like, 2025? Who cares? That's in 2 years. Well, first off, it's actually in about a year because it's almost 2024, but also it's because that $37 million injury guarantee kicks in this upcoming March, which means if Russell Wilson were to get injured during the last 2 games in any serious capacity and as a result couldn't pass a physical in March, that extra $37 million would kick in. So they're basically benching him to hopefully avoid injury, even though he will suit up and play if the backup QB that is now the starter, Jarrett Stidham, gets injured. And we need to talk more about Stidham in a moment because that situation is pretty crazy, but the signs were pointing towards the Broncos actually wanting to part ways with Russell Wilson this offseason, even though he's already owed $39 million in 2024 no matter what happens. And Diana Rossini confirmed late on Wednesday that this scenario was indeed what will most likely play out when she reported that Russell Wilson is expected to be cut by the team in March, and he's known that the ride has been over for the last couple of months.
They came up to me during the bye week and told me that if I didn't change my contract, my injury guarantee, that I'd be benched for the rest of the year.
This is a crazy situation, guys. I kind of feel for him, to be honest, but whatever happens next for Russell, I do think he's playing well enough. You can see his stats here for what it's worth, that he will more than likely start for some desperate team that really needs a QB next year, though he will probably have to accept quite a bit less money for whatever team that may be. Regardless, Russell Wilson seems to be handling this as well as he can be on the outside and recently posted this to X. God's got me, looking forward to what's next. And with Wilson most likely gone, that means Denver will be in another search for a new quarterback this offseason after just giving up Drew Lock, Noah Fant, Shelby Harris, and 5 draft picks that ended up becoming Boye Mafe, Devin Witherspoon, and Derek Hall, among others, in exchange for Russell Wilson and a 4th-round pick back in the offseason of 2022. And that's not even including them signing him to that huge extension before he ever played a snap for Denver. I mean, holy sh*. This is one of the worst trades in the history of the entire NFL. And again, while I feel for Wilson, as a Chiefs fan, all I can do is laugh. And before I finish this segment, one of the craziest things to me about this is the fact that Jarrett Stidham is now the starter for the last 2 weeks in Denver. The crazy part is this is exactly what happened to Stidham last season. He was the backup QB for the Raiders when they decided to bench Carr for similar reasons, and Stidham played the last 2 weeks in Vegas as the starter. I mean, holy smokes, dude. The scriptwriters are going crazy this year. Either that or Stidham has an FBI informant on his side to dig up dirt on the team he plays for, so they will force this man to start. Next up, I gotta shout out the season-long sponsor of the channel, Chiefs Bids, who is back with another free giveaway of this full-size Speed Authentic helmet signed by Travis Kelce. But first, they also have a lot of items from current and former Chiefs players to bid on, with some unique ones this week signed by Patrick Mahomes himself, like these red and white team-issued cleats, a game-issued jersey of his from the Texans game last year, as well as a Super Bowl 57 Nike jersey signed by him. There's also footballs and helmets from others like Creed Humphrey, Derek Johnson, Rashee Rice, and even some game-worn pants of George Karlaftis, Derek Nottie, and others from the Bills game. So make sure to check the app out frequently because the items you can bid on get updated all the time. Now, to enter for your chance to win this full-size helmet signed by Travis Kelce, just go to the Chiefs app in the bids portion, hit filter at the top right, select giveaways, and the helmet is going to pop up for you. And if you don't want to use the app, even though that's the easiest and preferred way, you can also click the link at the top of my description to go to their website and enter that way as well. Either way you choose, make sure to fill out your profile, including a shipping address and card info, because the winner will have to pay for shipping, which is still an absolute steal for this full-size helmet signed by the best tight end in the game. From here, we got to talk about Bengals wide receiver Ja'Marr Chase, who made his way back in the news for the same exact reason he always finds himself in the news, and that is for saying something extremely intelligent. He recently had this to say when asked what stands out to him about the Chiefs secondary.
If I'm being honest, nothing. They just know how to play us. They know the leverages. They know what splits we in. They throw a little double-doubles at us to stop the two best players on the outside, and that's all they do. It's not really like they got a Jalen Ramsey on these squads. That's why they double everybody, because they can't do it one-on-one. The best player on their team is Sneed, and that's a fact. Everybody knows that. It's not like they got a superstar on their defense.
I mean, I want what this man has been smoking, because L'Jarius Sneed has been targeted 78 times, allowing just a 52.6 reception percentage for 392 yards and 0 touchdowns. And this reception percentage actually puts him in the top 10 of all corners who have played 50% of 1,033 snaps per PFF, with some absolute dogs being on this list. And when you look at who Sneed has covered, he's clamped pretty much every team's wide receiver one down, from A.J. Brown to Tyreek Hill, who leads in receiving yards on this list when targeted with Sneed in coverage, Cortland Sutton, Keenan Allen, Justin Jefferson, Calvin Ridley. The list goes on, and he's currently playing like one of the best press corners in the entire NFL. Again, he's allowed 0 touchdowns covering those players, 0 games over 100 yards allowed, and just 2 games with more than 5 catches allowed while covering the opposing team's wide receiver one. So I think that would basically classify Sneed as a superstar level talent in the secondary. And if all that wasn't enough, this chart here shows cornerbacks who line up most often against opposing number 1 receivers and the average separation they allow when covering those wide receiver ones. Basically, if you cover wide receiver ones a lot, you want to be in the upper right quadrant. Well, that's basically just L'Jarius Sneed and Joey Porter Jr. out there on their own freaking island. Jalen Ramsey, by the way, he's down here. Though, to be fair, he had knee surgery this year, so this isn't really about putting Jalen Ramsey down, but more about showing that Sneed is out here among the best of any of them in the NFL. Now, one of the funniest parts to me of Chase's interview is when he said the Chiefs like to talk the most trash.
You enjoy that back and forth? I mean, it seems to happen every single game you play.
Hell yeah, they talk the most shit, that's why.
And he goes on to say Willie Gay Jr. is the one who talks the most smack on the team, which is interesting because he rarely ever says anything. And last year, to talk the most trash on the team, he said one word.
What is it about that Bengals offense that maybe impresses you the most? You played them a few times.
Nothing.
Wow. Look out for that one word trash talk, everybody, while Ja'Marr Chase literally cannot stop spewing sewage out of his mouth hole to save his life. I mean, if anyone talked trash last year on the Chiefs, it wasn't Willie Gay Jr., it was safety Justin Reed, who not only mixed up names of several players, but said anyone and everyone is still getting locked up, then proceeded to have a bit of a bad game himself during their regular season matchup. But even what Justin Reed said was pretty minor, aside from mixing up names, which was pretty embarrassing. But I digress, because after all this, I decided I was going to take this opportunity to reach out to Ja'Marr's representatives myself, and I got an exclusive interview with him just for you guys. Hi, yes, push-off merchant Ja'Marr. I was curious to your thoughts on what it feels like to have a Super Bowl ring.
I don't know, man.
Oh, okay, no problem. Can you say how many rings your franchise has in its entire history, though?
I can't say that today.
Okay, that's fine. How about this one? How do you feel knowing that you were basically one play away from winning the Super Bowl, but Burrow choked it away with you wide open?
Some days I wake up pissed off.
Yeah, I would wake up pissed off too. How about this? Do you think your team will ever win a Super Bowl ring?
That's a good one.
All right, last question, and I'll leave you alone. How do you feel like the success of the Bengals franchise stacks up compared to the success of the Chiefs organization, you know, with their 3 Super Bowl rings and all that?
You want me to go comparisons? It's not the same.
Well, hope y'all enjoyed that because it was an HBTC exclusive. All trolling aside, Jamar knew what he was doing when he decided to say all this BS.
But I'm just adding fire to the fuel right now. They're going to take this run with it. Hope they put it in the locker, but
He's just trying to rile people up like my real interview with him. So I get it to an extent. I troll around in my videos to intentionally get a rise out of the mentally malnourished. It's freaking easy to do. However, while he might be a top 5 receiver in the league, Jamar, he talks, the less I like him. Jamar is more unlikable than his distant cousin Jafar. I mean, many people refer to this team as the most unlikable in the league, and even return of Jafar's own coach, Zach Taylor, disagreed with how Chase went about things in that interview. Paul Dinner Jr., I believe is how you pronounce his name, reported that Zach Taylor spoke on this, saying Jamar is a confident guy that comes in and works hard, but those aren't things he would say. Quote, I think it's one of the best defenses in the league. I always want to be respectful of our opponent, especially an opponent that does things the right way. They're very talented. They're well coached. They pose a lot of issues. They are a really good football team. That's how I think about it. Well, Zach, that's because you think and actually use your brain. Anyway, the whole point of this segment is Chase is a wee bit crazy to try and take shots at the Chiefs defense right now when they are playing out of their minds. A better take for Chase would have been to troll around about the Chiefs offense, and you know what? I probably would have agreed with several of his points, but the defense?
Hell no!
And since we're on the subject of the defense, it's worth noting that after all this Sneed talk, I'm not even sure he's going to be playing in Sunday's game or not because Sneed hasn't practiced all week due to a calf injury he sustained in the Raiders game and is officially listed as questionable on the Chiefs injury report. And while this is concerning in my opinion, especially if Jamar Chase ends up playing, he didn't play last week, but is trending towards playing this week after separating his shoulder a couple games ago. The last time these two teams played in the AFC Championship game, I'm pretty sure Sneed got concussed on the first defensive drive for the Chiefs, and they still managed to figure it out and get the W. However, Bengals wide receiver Tyler Boyd left in the second quarter due to a thigh injury, so that helped offset things a bit. It's certainly going to be interesting if Sneed doesn't end up playing, but Andy Reid certainly did not rule the possibility of him playing completely out. He said there's a chance, though he will probably be a game time decision, as will Jamar Chase, most likely. Head coach Zach Taylor said today, quote, "We'll see. Take it over the next 48 hours when asked if Chase will indeed play." So yeah, while Sneed is listed as questionable, there's a few more that join him with this designation. Running back Isaiah Pacheco left last week's game with the concussion after his helmet came off on a play and he took a knee to the head by his own teammate. He didn't practice at all this week until today, but was just a limited participant. And he said that Pacheco is progressing in his protocol process, but isn't in the clear just yet. If Pacheco can't go though, Clyde Edwards-Helaire should be good to go, even though he missed most of this week due to an illness and is also listed as questionable to play. And with McKinnon recently placed on IR, I sure hope and pray Santa Maria Jesus, Clyde or Pacheco, at least one of them can go, because if not, it's going to be LaMichael Pirine, who was recently signed to the active roster, and maybe the newly signed Keontae Ingram, who is on the practice squad and just got added like 3 weeks ago. Then the last player listed as questionable is wide receiver Mecole Hardman, who Andy said could be up on Sunday back from IR. His 21-day window to return is open, so it might actually happen, but Andy said they are still seeing how it goes with him as they ramped up his workload this week at practice. If they do bring Hardman back, I'm pretty sure the roster is currently full at 53 players, so they will need to clear a roster spot for him. Keep your eyes out, because if they do that, it's probably going to be tomorrow. And then there are 2 players officially ruled out for the Chiefs, with those being left tackle Donovan Smith and wide receiver Kadarius Toney. Yes, both are out again, which means the rookie Wanya Morris is up again as well at left tackle after having a pretty rough go, to say the least, on Christmas. I even saw on this play here, I think his controller died and needed new batteries, but I'm hoping for more from him this Sunday. As far as the Bengals are concerned, their injury report looks a bit more simple. 2 are listed as questionable. One of them we've talked about already a lot. I'm done with that man, Jamar Chase. The other is cornerback Jalen Davis, who was limited all week with a groin injury. And the only other player that stood out to me on the injury report is running back Joe Mixon, who was added to the report today with an ankle injury of sorts, but has no game designation, so he will most likely play. On the subject of running backs, though, the Chiefs defense really needs to limit the run game of the Bengals, simply because it's a weakness of the Chiefs defense, who are top 5 in most categories, but are 18th against the run and gave up multiple chunk run plays last game when the defense knew the Raiders would be running. The Bengals, however, are 32nd, yes, dead last in rushing yards per game, averaging just 82.7 yards, which could help, but it's still something the Chiefs defense needs to keep contained, because if the run game gets going, it's only going to help the Bengals passing game that much more, and they arguably have the best wide receiver trio in the league with Boyd, Higgins, and Chase, which is why having Sneed out there would be helpful if at all possible, even if they do have Jake Browning rather than Joe Burrow. Browning is playing pretty decent this season, but looked a bit lost out there last week without Chase during their 11-34 loss to the Steelers. The Bengals need this game badly, though, to keep their playoff hopes alive, and hopefully the Chiefs defense shuts this offense all the way down, because the Chiefs offense is going to need all the help they can get. Since week 8, Chiefs offense is averaging just 18.25 points per game, only scoring over 21 points twice in the last 8-game stretch that they have gone 3-5 in during that time. Gag. On top of that, the offense is 20th in the league in EPA per pass, 19th in EPA per rush, and is 26th in rushing success rate since week 8, way below their usual average. And it doesn't help that KC is also tied for dead last in turnover differential, -10, with the Washington Red Commanders. They are also coming off a pretty miserable loss to the Raiders and will need to seriously get it figured out this week, as they only have 2 more weeks left in the season before the playoffs. A win on Sunday will win them the AFC West for the 8th year in a row, so that is their ultimate goal. I will note, even if they lose against the Bengals, if the Broncos lose or tie, as well as the Raiders lose or tie, they can still win the West that way. But please, for the love of God, we need this W. Mahomes knows he needs to play better. Andy knows he needs to coach better. The wide receiver room knows they need to do a better job running routes, communicating with Mahomes, being on the same page with him, and the whole team knows they need to do a better job of securing the football as well, at least on the offensive side of the ball, and taking the ball away on the defensive side of the ball. So hopefully somebody steps up this week outside of Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce, because they need somebody else to show they are even just somewhat capable. If they get Hardman back, maybe it's him. Justin Ross is still around. He had like 10 snaps last game, 1 catch for 2 yards. Justin Watson made some plays last week, but that pick 6 was partially on him as well. MVS has gone off against the Bengals in the past, so maybe he resurrects and comes back from the dead for this game. Ultimately, I do not care who it is. Just please, God, let it be somebody. The O-line will also need to watch out for defensive end Trey Hendrickson, who leads the team by far with 16 sacks on the season. It's also worth noting that since he got a key piece of their secondary back for this game as well, as it was announced today that cornerback Cam Taylor-Britt was added back to the active roster from IR. He was placed there back on December 4th with an ankle injury, but was a full go this week and is ready to go. And with all that being said, I still believe, okay, trying my best here, the Chiefs can get it done against a tough opponent in the Bengals, which is why I have KC winning 21-18 in a wildly heart-pounding close game down to the wire, with the Chiefs defense stepping up and getting home to Browning and hopefully forcing a couple of turnovers to help out the Chiefs' already struggling offense. What are your score predictions, though? Do you think KC can get it done or nah? Make sure to let me know your score predictions in the comments down below, and on your way out, don't forget to enter for your chance to win that signed Travis Kelce helmet. And until next time, let's go. Let's freaking go. How about those?